One. All right, let's get started. Thanks for tuning in to our weekly biohack workshop where we're going to be covering the 3 theories of aging, or as I like to call them, the 3 theories of aging and disease. Now, the way this will work is it'll work best if just in order to be respectful of everyone's time, if you could just please hold your questions until the very end. I'll spend about 30 or 40 minutes covering the science behind biohacking. And since a few of you have asked me about or talked to me about the possibility of starting your own biohack enterprise, I'm going to just spend just a couple minutes at the very end covering that for you. If that's not the part that you're interested in, I just appreciate your patience. Let me just cover that with them. Again, it's going to be at the very end. Now, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Marco Rodriguez. My beautiful wife, Diane, and I, we are in private practice almost 10 years now. We own Transformations Rehab Services in El Paso, Texas. And, I say this every week, Diane and I are extremely blessed with a great team, and we have been able to build one of the largest outpatient clinics offering neurofeedback and brain mapping in the country. And, along with that comes its pros and cons, obviously. One of the cons is that as a healthcare clinic, we get approached by vendors almost on a regular basis. And most of the time they're asking us to, how it is, promote their product. And I always do my due diligence, but most of the time it's just what I call another me-too product that lacks the significant scientific backing. And I don't know how many of you can relate with that, but for us, this had gone on for several years, and I'll be honest with you, it kind of started to wear on me a little bit, so much so that I just kind of believed that they were all the same. Right? They were all, it was just a scam. It was all snake oil. And I became very dismissive of most natural products. And that's probably one of the reasons why I wouldn't even look at the LifeVantage opportunity for almost 3 years, just simply because I thought it was like all of the other products out there that overpromise and underdeliver. But I'm so grateful to my friend Patsy Caulfield, who is on tonight. Patsy, thanks for tuning in. She originally contacted me about LifeVantage way back in May of 2015. But it wasn't until 3 years later that I was willing to actually sit down and take a serious look at what all the fuss was about. And what I learned that day changed my life. Now, what's most significant for me was that during those 3 years when I wouldn't look at the opportunity, my father passed away of prostate cancer. And I'm convinced, based on the studies with LSU, Johns Hopkins, Harvard, and all many other world-renowned institutions, I'm convinced that this would have helped my dad to have a better quality of life. So I made a decision that day that I would never stop sharing the good news of how biohacking can improve your life. And as I sat there listening to Patsy and to Carrie Williams and to Dr. Rodarte, and I thought to myself, it might be too late for my father, but it's not too late for my son, Seth. So I'm going to introduce you to my son, Seth. Give me just a moment. All right, I assume you guys can see the slides. All right, so now I'm going to go to from the beginning. All right, actually, I'll introduce you to my entire family. Just give me like 60 seconds to do that. So this is my wife, Diane. She is on tonight. She's logged on tonight as well. She's on from home, and I'm at the office. And so this is our daughter, Kayla, and one of our grandchildren, Destiny. And then down here at the bottom, we have Alexandra, my son, Mark, Patrick, Donovan, and then this little guy right here, this is Seth. Now you're going to want to remember this guy because he's a big part of this whole story. He's the one that kind of was a catalyst in all of this for us. And so this is Seth. Let me tell you just a quick story about Seth and why it's important. Seth is now 17 years old. When he was 7 years old, up until the point where he was 7 years old, he was just like every other kid. No real issues. He was very athletic. As you can see here, he loved to go into the garage with me and work out. Cute kid, very spunky personality. Well, when he was 7 years old, he was at summer camp and he fell and sustained a closed head injury. And of course, being a therapist, we did therapy with him, OT speech. We did neurofeedback with him. And he did survive, thank God for that. But he always had ongoing residual issues. For example, he had some motor coordination issues, speech issues, and he was in special education for about 8 years. So I thought to myself, after I did all the study, all the researching, and really looked at what this does, I thought, well, maybe, just maybe, it could help Seth. So I started biohacking with him about 2 years ago. And what I found and what I saw was completely unexpected. Now, I've been a therapist for about about 28 years. I've been in healthcare for over 30 years, and I've never seen anything work so quickly like it did with Seth. So this is Seth. These are his grades prior to biohacking. As you can see, he was decent, but this is with, he had a 504, special education, accommodations, modifications. I had all of the teachers' phone numbers. I mean, we were constantly communicating. It was a struggle just to get this. A few weeks later, or I'm sorry, let's just skip all the way over here to 16 weeks later after biohacking. Look what happened to his grades. Now, by this point, I thought, okay, I'm going to kind of step away. Let me see what he can do on his own. And he was able to do all of this on his own. And I think it's funny that the only B that he got was in Spanish, considering our last name is Rodriguez. But, he just completely blew it out of the water. He took the STAR test. It's a test that we have here in the state of Texas. Blew that out of the water. They retested him again for special education. And for the first time in 8 years, he tested out of special education. In fact, now he's in advanced placement getting college credit. He was having a lot of motor coordination issues. So that started to kind of improve. And so in our family, we have several sports that are really big. One of them is because of my wife, and she's got a 3rd-degree black belt in judo, and she's done kickboxing and all kind of stuff like that, all different martial arts. He got really interested in it. So he is now in judo as well as jiu-jitsu. And this is at one of the largest tournaments in El Paso at the Coliseum, at the Hayashi tournament. And if you notice here, he's got an orange belt, and he's going up against a guy who's, if you know anything about martial arts, it goes white belt, yellow belt, orange belt. And here he is going against a guy that's a brown belt. That's almost at a black belt. And this guy outweighs him by about 20 pounds, 20, 30 pounds. And Seth was able to hold his own. So I got really excited, and I started coming back to my office and telling people about it, right? Isn't that what we do when we know something and we experience something? What do? We share with people. That's just what humans do. So I started sharing it. I started sharing it with this woman right here. Her name is Anna Cox. She was our marketing director. Her job was to be out in the field, talking to doctors, sharing with them what we're doing, and kind of keeping in touch, our community outreach person. Well, she has stage 3 arthritis, and slowly it started to kind of eat away at her to the point where we had to take her out of the field and put her in an office where she was doing billing, helping out with billing and some other office duties. She was using a walker. They had already ordered her wheelchair, and she was needing to use a shower chair. Needless to say, she was a miserable person during that time. So I shared this with her, and I love what she said. She says, I have nothing else to lose because according to the doctors, my life is over. It's over as I know it. So she starts biohacking. And again, same thing again. It took several weeks. So guys, understand this is not magic. It does take time. But after several weeks, she starts feeling better. And one day she walks in, no walker. Thought, wow, that's kind of cool. She explained to us she didn't need a walker. She wasn't using her wheelchair. In fact, she had gotten rid of her wheelchair. And hey, Diane, I think somebody's on and they're not muted. If you can just go back and just remute everyone or find them, just don't mute me because I'm talking. But so she didn't need her walker anymore. She got rid of the wheelchair and she got rid of the shower chair. So you know what happens? Word gets around. People start to notice the changes. Well, this particular woman, she saw what happened. And she does our billing in our office. And she says, I wonder what this could do for my son. Now, her son was diagnosed on the autism spectrum, had a lot of neuroatypicalities, a lot of behavior issues, lack of interaction, and he was virtually nonverbal. So she starts biohacking with him. And it wasn't until maybe about a month, maybe a little bit longer, I don't have the exact time frame, maybe 5-6 weeks later, he walks into the office and he's engaged in full and complete conversations. Now, he's 10 years old at the time. His conversation level was somewhere around 7 or 8 years old. So it wasn't completely caught up, but compared to being virtually nonverbal, I looked over at the mom, at Lori, and she was in tears. And she said that he had just really started ramping up over the previous week. And so it was just absolutely remarkable. And so I just saw what this could do for adults, what this could do for kids. And I thought, this whole biohacking thing is the real deal. So let me just kind of go over a couple things about what biohacking is. Now, biohacking is a term that's used within the science of nutrigenomics. And nutrigenomics is the science of how natural compounds affect us all the way down to our genetic expression. Now, here's what I mean by that. We all know that if you eat junk food all the time, the chances of maintaining your health are slim to none. If you eat healthy all the time, well, you have a greater probability of keeping your health for much longer, and maybe even having a longer lifespan. Most of us do somewhere in between. We don't eat junk food all the time, but we're not completely healthy all the time. Well, nutrigenomics gets down even deeper than that. It actually looks at how natural compounds affect you all the way down to your genetic expression. For example, the human genome was mapped out. They completed it in the year 2000, and we now know that we have about 20,000 genes in our body. About 10% of those genes are what they call set in stone. So in other words, science hasn't figured out how to manipulate those genes, how to regulate them. But the other 90% can actually be affected almost like a dimmer switch, either up or down regulated. And so let's see here. Inflammation. Let's look at the inflammatory gene. The inflammatory gene is a good example. It's necessary. We all need it. If you twist your ankle, what happens to your ankle? Yeah, it swells up. It triggers the inflammatory process. Well, that's important because that swelling, that inflammation, actually protects the ankle from further injury. The problem is that because of the environmental assault that we are constantly bombarded, whether it be the food we eat, the air we breathe, and now everybody's talking about the negative effects of 5G. And how those radio waves are actually affecting our mitochondria and our genetic expression that way. Well, because of all of that, those inflammatory genes, that inflammatory process is triggered almost on a chronic basis. And so we need something to turn those genes off. Milk is another good example, right? It will trigger those inflammatory genes. Well, doesn't it make sense that if you can put something in your body or expose your body to something to turn those genes on, that you can put something in your body or expose your body to something to turn those genes off, right? Does that make sense? Okay. Now, people often ask me, is the science of nutrigenomics, is this some sort of new age, fad? Well, it's not. Nutrigenomics has existed for decades. And it wasn't until the early 2000s when it really came to the forefront of the medical community. It started off with a group of scientists led by Dr. Joe McCord. He's a 4-time Nobel Prize nominee, as well as the winner of the Elliott Crescent Award and multiple other awards. Well, in the early 2000s, he made some discoveries that really rocked the medical community. More than that, it caught the attention of the news media, in particularly John Quinones from ABC Primetime. So John Quinones goes out and visits him. And now, if you know anything about John Quinones, he's an investigative reporter. So he's not there to promote you. He's there to poke holes and to debunk any claims that you're making. So he goes, he sees Dr. McCord, they do some blood tests, and he kind of does his ABC Primetime based on the results of that blood work. Now, I want you to understand something. This was the lead story for ABC that night. When have you ever heard of a health or wellness story being the lead story? So I'm going to have you watch just a small part of that clip. The entire clip is about 10 or 15 minutes long, but I've got like about a 3-minute version that I want to share with you.
You want to get an edge on turning back the clock? Who doesn't? Well, it's no longer science fiction, but science possibility, a potential breakthrough. It may not look like the fountain of youth, but inside this nondescript building, I'm about to become part of an exciting experiment. For me, it begins with a blood test.
It wouldn't be the first time I've given blood for this company.
They want to check my levels of something called T-bars, which is a rough indicator of a person's actual age. T-bars can identify a condition known as oxidative stress, a kind of measure of the wear and tear on our bodies. Oxidative stress, like the rusting of an engine, is not a good thing. The problem of aging begins with the very food we eat to give us energy. As our cells burn that food, they also release toxic chemicals. Those chemicals, you may know them as free radicals, react with all the components of our cells, literally bombarding them millions of times per second, damaging all our cells. The result? Oxidative stress. And we all have it. The body fights back with a system of defenses. It makes two antioxidant enzymes, catalase and SOD, whose job is to gobble up the free radicals before they can harm our cells.
So, doctor, how often do I take these?
And so, here I go. With that swallow, I've just become part of a potentially landmark scientific experiment. It's called Protandim, and tests have already shown that it revs up the manufacture of those good enzymes in our bodies. More enzymes, fewer free radicals to harm us. Normally, oxidative stress, measured by those T-bars, increases with age, but taking just one pill of Protandim a day reversed that trend for everyone at every age, even for an 80-year-old. So just what's in this seemingly incredible pill? Well, actually, its roots are very humble. Protandim is a combination of 5 plant ingredients. Some you may know: green tea or turmeric, a spice used in Indian cooking. Others, Withania somnifera and Silybum marianum, are more exotic. High oxidative stress is associated with more than aging. It's been linked to hundreds of illnesses.
It's at the very center of many diseases: liver disease, diabetes, emphysema, asthma, all of these, strokes, heart attacks, even mental disease. Yes,
Depression?
Alzheimer's disease, depression.
But what about my progress? After nearly 2 weeks now, it's time to get my results. The result? My level of oxidative stress has declined dramatically. Just look at where I fall on the graph, before and after. Have we turned back the clock? Maybe not on the outside, but deep inside within my cells. Yes, indeed.
We do know that oxidative stress is part of those disease processes. I don't want to wait until I'm 80 years old to find out that I should have taken it.
The company that makes Protandim says its tests show the pill, made from ingredients used for centuries, is absolutely safe. For more, go to our website at abcnews.com.
LifeVantage began in a lab with a single powerful scientific discovery. A discovery that proved that people around us have more capacity, potential, and ability within them than we had been led to believe. At LifeVantage, we can no longer accept the limits of the human condition. So we began introducing the world to biohacking. The idea that you can be better today than you were yesterday. That you can take control of your own biology. That your health doesn't have to decline as you get older. You don't have to simply accept the hand you've been dealt. In just a few short years, LifeVantage has brought biohacking to the mainstream, shortening the gap between cutting-edge scientific research and the customer. Every day in research labs around the world, we are learning how much more our bodies can do for us if we only flip the right internal switches. So we're creating products that flip those switches. And we're doing it with a dedication to quality and safety and a different approach to selling those products. Sure, we could have gone the expected route, sold our products on big box shelves just like everyone else. In fact, at first we did just that. But we realized something. Our product sales were fueled by word of mouth and personal success stories, not marketing dollars. So we stopped paying big box stores and started paying our customers for what they were already doing, which allowed us to eliminate the gamble of traditional advertising in favor of performance-based payouts. And in the process, we ended up turning biohacking into a movement, empowering women, minorities, and all entrepreneurs to break societal barriers and realize what they're capable of, fueled by the power of a leveraged income. From 127 biohackers when we began to over 1 million in less than a decade. The movement has become a global phenomenon with no signs of slowing down. And our products aren't the only way we're investing in human potential. We're creating hardworking technology using AI, machine learning, and mobility to make it as easy to run a LifeVantage business as it is to take an Uber.
Welcome to the LifeVantage app.
Because of that first profound discovery, we are fiercely dedicated to helping others see what we have seen, to see the immense potential in those around us. It's an inspiring way to see the world. It's why the biohacker movement continues to grow at a blistering pace. It's why giving back to our communities is a fundamental core belief. And it's why in a few short years, we have expanded into 15 countries and counting and grown from one groundbreaking nutrigenomic product to over 20. It's why we now have relationships with CEOs, sports teams, and influencers. It's why LifeVantage has grown from $3 million in revenue our first year to closing in on $250 million. And it's why we will never stop. Because to change the way the world sees, you can't merely settle for different. You have to be better and engineer a world of potential in the process.
All right, love it. I love watching that video every single time. So when that ABC primetime report first aired back in 2005, LifeVantage was a small biotech company. It is publicly traded on NASDAQ, and it was doing maybe a couple $100,000 in volume. It wasn't a retail giant like it is now. It was really a group of scientists looking for ways of unlocking the aging code. That's really how this whole thing started. Well, shortly after that ABC primetime report aired, the lab received well over $5 million worth of orders within the next week. Now that sounds good, but remember, group of scientists, no manufacturing, no infrastructure. I don't think Amazon was around, at least not like it is now. And it was an absolute disaster. In fact, the stock was at $1 a share. It shot up to $20 a share just overnight on sheer speculation alone. And then it dropped to 7 cents a share because of the chaos. Everything was backordered for 8 months, and the company was in danger of being delisted. So, in fact, I heard that the Oprah Winfrey show called. They wanted to feature Dr. McCord on her show. He never returned her call. He just didn't know who she was, I guess. So what started off as a blessing actually turned into a disaster. But here's the good news. Universities from all around the world saw that John Quinones's oxidative stress levels were reduced by what? 45% in, it was less than 2 weeks. It was actually in 13 days. So they contacted Dr. McCord's office saying, we want to study Protandim as it relates to whatever area of study that we're involved with. So for example, LSU, in conjunction with the Skin Cancer Foundation, studied Protandim, and they found that it reduces the recurrence or the proliferation of skin melanoma by an average of 57%. In that study, they actually outlined how Protandim suppresses tumors. Johns Hopkins University had a very similar study as it relates to lung cancer with very similar results. The American Heart Association, they published a 26-page article in Circulation magazine on its effects on cardiovascular health. The results were so impressive that they funded, not us, the American Heart Association, they funded another study with Ohio State on Protandim's effect on bypass surgeries. So you've got all different kinds of universities. For example, you got over here Harvard Medical School, studied Protandim, Texas Tech, Eames in Mexico City. There was a university in the Netherlands, which I just didn't have time to put on the slide. Oh, and the National Institute of Aging, which is our tax dollars at work, as part of the National Institute of Health. They studied Protandim for 10 years. They had several different natural products as well as medication. And at the conclusion of their study, they said that Protandim was the only natural product clinically proven to extend the life of mammals by an average of 7%. So in human years, you're talking about 5 years. Now, what's interesting is that that study was only done on half the dose. So my understanding is that a new study has started, a new 10-year study on the full dose. Who knows what will happen? Half the dose was 5 years. The full dose could be 10, but I think that maybe sometimes when you have synergy, it could be 15 or 20 years. And what we're talking about here is quality of life, not life stuck in some nursing home hooked up to a bunch of tubes. So in that report, the word oxidative stress was mentioned multiple times. And most people that I talk to don't know what oxidative stress is. So let me just kind of go over it with you so that you have a better understanding. The first thing that you need to know is that everyone has it, yes, including you. In fact, this is such a big deal that if you look in PubMed.gov, which is our National Library of Medicine, you'll see it's like a search engine, and you type in oxidative stress. There are over 200,000 studies just on the topic of oxidative stress. Now, you got to understand something. Studies aren't free. They're certainly not cheap either. They cost thousands upon tens of thousands of dollars just for studies. Some of the big ones cost more than that. So what we're talking about here is hundreds of billions of dollars that are being spent to study this topic of oxidative stress, and yet the average person doesn't know anything about what it does. And what it does is it's been linked to over 200 different diseases. Yeah, I want you to understand that. Oxidative stress, and there's another factor that we're going to talk about in a few minutes called mitochondrial dysfunction. Those two factors have been linked to over 200 different diseases, things like cancer, diabetes, Parkinson's, lupus, fibromyalgia, autism, ADHD, all types of inflammatory diseases. And yet, the average person doesn't know anything about what oxidative for oxidative stress is. If you take an apple and you cut it open and you let it sit out for a while, what happens to the apple? Well, it turns brown, right? That's the oxidation process. It's the same process that if you take a piece of iron and you let it sit out in the environment outside with the rain and with the air, what happens to the iron? It begins to rust. Well, it begins to oxidize. So it's a very similar process, and it could be said that we're literally rusting from the inside out. And it comes from what? The food you eat, the air you breathe, all the pesticides, and all of the food and non-food, right? My wife was at a grocery store the other day, and she talked about how she walked down an aisle, and there was nothing in that entire, in several aisles, there was nothing that was real food. And that's what we're putting in our bodies. So, what are your options? Diet could work, but as my good friend Gianni Ballou pointed out, there was a study that was done by UCLA, and they said that nowadays you have to eat almost 50 times the amount of things like spinach or blueberries that you did back in the 1950s just to get the same amount of nutritional content. That is how depleted our food is. So your other option would be Protandim. Protandim has been clinically proven to reduce your oxidative stress by an average of 40% in 30 days and up to 70% in 120 days. It's been certified by the NSF, so what we say is in it is in it. Also, it's been certified by the Banned Substance Control Group, so it's safe for elite level athletes. Now, if you go to Google, I don't go to Google for a lot of my research, obviously. I mean, I go to PubMed, but in Google, they have a picture of Manny Pacquiao holding his bottle of Protandim. I've heard all different types of athletes, which I don't have time to necessarily go into detail here. Donnie Osmond from the Donnie and Marie show, he's a big time performer now in Vegas. He was on the Dr. Phil show talking about how, in his mind, Protandim is the closest thing to the fountain of youth. So whether you're an athlete or whether you're a performer, it is certified by the BSCG, so it's safe for you. Also, it's been that study with the National Institute of Aging, again, the only natural product clinically proven to extend the life of mammals by an average of 7%. Now, people ask me all the time, what is so magical about this product, about this pill? I always laugh the way they ask, but it's not magic. It's science. It's actually just 5 key ingredients. Some of them you might know. Most of them I was already taking, like ashwagandha, bacoba, green tea, silymarin, which is milk thistle, and curcumin. Some of you know it as turmeric. But and each of these, in and of themselves, is very helpful. But here's where the magic is. Dr. McCord spent decades figuring out the right formula. So it's almost like a recipe. If you're going to bake a cake or bake bread, you have what? Water, oil, eggs, etc., right? Flour. But it's not just putting a bunch of ingredients and then hoping that you get bread. It's the right amount of each ingredient. And that's what Dr. McCord did is, so his formula is actually 18 times more effective than just these ingredients in and of themselves, okay? Now, Washington State University, they studied the NRF2 pathway. That's the pathway that Protandim activates. It exists inside of your endoplasmic reticulum, and that NRF2 pathway is so powerful that Washington may well become the most extraordinary therapeutic and most extraordinary preventative breakthrough in the history of medicine. If you ever get a chance to look at that study, it's been studied against things like HIV, irritable bowel disease, all different types of liver damage, cancer, etc. Now, again, I always abide by FDA regulations. I can't make claims that we treat, cure, or mitigate disease. What I want you to do is go do your own research and see what the research says, all right? So people ask me, so if NRF2 and this whole thing is such a big deal, why aren't more of the pharmaceutical companies developing NRF2 medication? Why is it all just natural? Okay, we want, then there's a lot of people who prefer medication, and that's, good luck to you. But the pharmaceutical companies have caught on. In fact, they have started to develop synthetic versions of NRF2. For example, Biogen, which is a pharmaceutical company, they spent over $1 billion coming up with a synthetic version of NRF2, and it was called BG12. It's now called Tecfidera. And when it came out, it was heralded as the holy grail of medications for persons with multiple sclerosis. Now, their claim to fame was that it reduced the recurrence of multiple, or the relapse of multiple sclerosis by 50%. So in their trials, your clinical trials, they compared it to multiple other medications and different products. Protandim was one of those products. And this was published in PubMed.gov as well. Now, the one thing you need to know about PubMed is that it is a peer-reviewed study. So you have to disclose all of the positives and the negatives. So you can't just post what benefits you. So I love what they said. At their conclusion, they said, interestingly, Protandim, a dietary supplement consisting of herbal ingredients, was the most potent inducer and therefore may be the most suited as a therapeutic strategy. I love that. Tecfidera is a $65,000 a year medication. One bottle of Protandim is about $50 a month. There's no drug interactions, and you don't have to have multiple sclerosis to take it because it is a natural product, and we know that NRF2 helps with so many other different health issues. So, in fact, look at this. MD Anderson. I just put this into my workshop because I thought it was important. MD Anderson in Houston is now studying NRF2 as of 2018. They started studying NRF2 on how it affects cancer. Now, we've heard lots and lots of stories. There have been case studies. There's a case study at the Mayo Clinic of a guy who had stage 4 pancreatic cancer. And so the case study was because, when you have pancreatic cancer stage 4, that's a 3 to 6 month death sentence. And this guy was still alive 8 years later. So the whole study talks about all the, the things that he did. And primarily what he did was take Protandim. It's just really crazy, the things. I know, Patsy, you're on there. Patsy Caulfield, the person who shared this with us, she's got an incredible story with her mom on very similar issues. So again, for the sake of time, I won't go into it, but the research is out there. Now, that's the first theory of aging. The second theory of aging is mitochondrial dysfunction. Now, some of you might be wondering, what in the world is that? Well, if you go back to junior high school biology, you remember that inside of every cell, you have organelles, and one of those organelles is the mitochondria. It is the powerhouse of the cell. So if you remember things like ATP, Krebs cycle, and so forth, it's what the mitochondria does is when you consume food, your stomach liquefies it, and it goes into your blood system, and it goes into every cell of your body. Well, the part of the cell that processes the food, and might I say non-food, the preservatives and the food dyes and all of that, is this little thing right here called the mitochondria. Well, as the mitochondria start to break down, it can lead to all kinds of really bad things. So it's been linked to things like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, cancer, even autism. We know that 78 to 80% of children with autism have mitochondrial dysfunction. They also have high levels of oxidative stress. So it's a very, very bad thing. In fact, even if you were a very healthy person, by the time you're 50, the average person has lost about 50% of the mitochondria. I'm 52, so that concerns me. They also, by the time you're 70, you've lost about 90%. So you only have about 10% of the mitochondria that you did as a youth. Well, it doesn't take a rocket science to see the difference of the energy levels and the cognitive processes of a teenager versus a person that's 70. So when I first heard about this 2 years ago, I thought, okay, I've got to do something about this. Let me check and see how this works. And so I started. After I saw what it did for Seth, I started taking it. 14 months later, I went and got my blood work done, and all of my biomarkers came back, including my lipid peroxidase, which is the oxidative stress. It came back consistent with a 24.6-year-old adult. Guys, I am 52, but my cellular age is under that of a 25-year-old. And I got to tell you, I feel amazing. I started about 6 months ago. I started taking MMA for the very first time, and I'm enjoying it. My body feels wonderful. All right, so Protandim NRF1 activator. That NRF1 pathway is another pathway inside of the endoplasmic reticulum. And so our NRF1 activator triggers that pathway, and it puts the cell into a state of mitochondrial biogenesis. And all that means, I'm a science geek, so I don't mean to geek you guys out, but all that means is that it puts the cell into a state of creating newer and healthier mitochondria. It's a big, big deal. The third theory of aging, I'm going to kind of move through this because I want to be respectful of everyone's time. The third theory of aging is the theory of sirtuins. As we get older, our sirtuin levels drop. And if you look at the bottom left of the screen, this is a chromosome. If you look at the red tips, anytime you see red, that's a very bad thing. So what happens as we get older, it's almost like, okay, I always use this example, and it always kind of makes me laugh. Your shoelaces. At the end of your shoelaces, what do you have? That little plastic cover, that little cap. Well, in a very similar way, your chromosomes have a cap at the end of the chromosomes. As you get older, that cap starts to wear down. And so your chromosomes literally become frayed. Well, what the NAD synergizer activates your sirtuins, what it does is it's almost like it puts a cap over those chromosomes. Okay, and it keeps them from, it actually slows down the aging process. Now, there's different ways to boost your sirtuin levels. One of them, you could go into calorie restriction, what I call starvation mode, and that will put your body in a state of survival mode, and it boosts your sirtuins by 94%. The nearest competitor boosts your sirtuins by 2%, and ours is clinically proven to boost your sirtuins by 100% within 24 hours. Now, when you combine the NRF1, NRF2, and the NAD synergizer, all kinds of really cool things happen. It starts to, they almost start to work in unison, like in a synergy. And if you look at this NRF2 gene, the HMO X1 gene, it boosts it by, look at that, 1,563%. That's a huge one, and you can see all of them. 967% for the NAMPT gene. So working, I call them the three amigos, and this what they call the tri-synergizer. Amazing when you put all of those together. Now, I love the fact that LifeVantage has taken that same NRF2 technology and put them into different products. One of them is Axio. If you saw, I don't know if you noticed during the video, I got my Axio right here. It is liquid brain food. It was originally marketed as a energy drink, but now we know that it's so much more. It's liquid brain food, an NRF2 activator for the brain. I could go into all kinds of geeky science stuff about how it activates your brain. It puts your brain into a state of neurogenesis because of the ingredients in it, or axonal genesis, but I'll spare y'all from that. Suffice to say that, look at this child right here. Look at the difference in his handwriting before and his handwriting after biohacking or the Axio. Now, this is the nephew of a physician, Dr. Brett Brimhall in Phoenix. And he was the physician of a child that had autism that was a biohacker as well. And he saw the results in him that were so remarkable that he himself became a biohacking doctor as well. So So that's Axio. This was a study that was done by Dr. Fanning. He is a neuropsychologist out of Glendale, Arizona. And what he does is brain mapping, which takes a three-dimensional image of the electrical activity of the brain. So he took studies on the brain on different subjects before and after biohacking. Again, anytime you see red, red is not a good thing. We were so inspired, and I had a chance to meet him in Charleston. And a great guy. If you ever get a chance to meet Dr. Fanning, I recommend it. He helped us out quite a bit so that we are now doing our own studies, our own brain map studies here at the clinic. And again, the results have been just nothing short of miraculous. I love the fact that LifeVantage has taken and really expanded their product line. Do you remember the study with LSU on skin cancer? Well, at their recommendation, they came up with the world's first NRF2 activated skincare system. I mean, look at the difference here in her skin. And guys, this is not Photoshopped. We were in Cancun recently, and my wife was outside, and she's very fair skinned and got a sunburn, and her face was just beet red. It was funny because she put one of the creams on her face, and within 60 seconds, all of the burn was gone. The inflammation and the redness. It was really kind of, it's just kind of freaky if you don't understand the science. It's really kind of, I don't know, freaky, I guess is the right word. We also came out with the world's first NRF2 activated hair care system. Really great product. They have a complete weight management system. And then, of course, for our four-legged friends, we have our NRF2 activator for pets. The company also, LifeVantage, also came out with a probiotic. And let me explain why the probiotic is important. Everyone should be taking a probiotic. And I'll also explain why our probiotic is so important. The foods that we eat now are literally destroying our digestive system. You have to understand that your digestive lining is only 1 cell thick. Because of all the preservatives, all the food colorings and everything that we're eating, it is literally destroying the inside of your digestive system. And what happens with a lot of people is they start to develop what's called leaky gut. And what that is, it's kind of gross actually. The waste is supposed to go out of your body, right? By having a bowel movement. Well, when you have leaky gut, you literally have perforations or holes throughout your digestive system, and all of that waste that's supposed to come out of your body, much of it leaks back into your body, and it just gets recycled in your bloodstream over and over and over again. Kind of gross, right? That can lead to all kinds of really bad things like sinus issues, a lot of inflammatory issues such as rheumatoid arthritis. Look at this, adrenal glands being shot. All types of skin cancer, whether it's rosacea, ischemia, psoriasis, acne, thyroid issues, all of that can be linked back to a poor gut health. Even autism. We know now that a lot of these kids they're on the autism spectrum and ADHD, they have really poor gut biomes. So what makes our probiotic special is this little thing right here called BIOHACK technology. What it does is it protects the spheres, and it's almost like a time release so that it doesn't dissolve until it gets down into your lower intestines where that's where you need it. Most other probiotics are destroyed in the stomach because of the acids and the enzymes that you have in your stomach. So ours, I started taking it, and it made such a big difference. That was one of the issues that I used to have, is really poor gut health, and that's made a big difference for me. All right, so I'm going to kind of start wrapping this up here because I want to be respectful of everyone's time. People often will ask me if these products are available through stores, and the answer is that they used to be. Shortly after that ABC primetime report aired, LifeVantage tried to market their products through conventional means such as these big box stores like GNC, Whole Foods, CVS, and other stores like that. But the problem was that if you've ever been inside one of these stores, there's products everywhere. And typically the store clerk isn't educated enough, and he's not going to take the time to explain the benefits of the products, certainly not like I'm doing tonight on this webinar. So Protandim sat on the shelf selling less than 1 bottle per store per month. Meanwhile, you have all of these studies coming back saying that this works 100% of the time on 100% of mammals. Studies on, again, cancer, diabetes, Parkinson's, lupus, And then you have that Washington State University study that says that NRF2 activation may well become what? The most extraordinary therapeutic and most extraordinary preventative breakthrough in the history of medicine. Wow, that's a mouthful. So LifeVantage was sort of faced with a dilemma, how to get the word out on their product and as well as the research. So they brought in a group of consultants, and after much debate, it was agreed upon that this was a product whose story needed to be told, not by some 10-second TV commercial that no one's watching, but by the very people whose lives had been changed by and were willing to share their experiences. Now, as a business owner, that made sense to me. It's how Diane and I built our clinic, through referrals, basically through word of mouth. It's how many small businesses get started. And now with social media, it's even better. It's even easier. So suffice to say that the strategy worked out very well. LifeVantage grew from about $2 million in sales to well over $228 million. But more importantly, LifeVantage created an opportunity for people like you and I to capitalize on something that we're already doing, which is sharing our experiences with others. And we do that all the time, whether it be a movie or whatever we're excited about. Think about my son, Seth. My son no longer needs special education. This did for him in a couple of months what 8 years of therapy couldn't do. And do you think that maybe I've reached out to a few people and a few parents who are struggling with a similar situation? Yeah, of course I have. What about Anna Cox or Lori Miranda? Anna was using a walker, and Lori's son couldn't hardly talk, and both of them have seen extraordinary changes. Do you think that maybe their friends and family have noticed? Yeah, I would hope so. Then maybe they've shared this with a few people. Yeah, of course they have. It's what humans do. We connect with others. We share information that we're excited about. So LifeVantage will reward you based on the number of people that you can help. And it's important to always share from your heart, to share with authenticity. And when you do that, LifeVantage will reroute their advertising dollars to reward people like you and I. So as I mentioned, LifeVantage is a biotech company. It is publicly traded on NASDAQ. And the reason why that's important is because our numbers are scrutinized by the SEC, the Security and Exchange Commission. So if you're a Pro 3, your business is doing about $5,000 in volume, well, you can rest assured that you're going to be making about $600 per month on average. Now, that may not seem like much to some of you, but for some people, that's going to make a big difference. One guy put it this way. He said, I'd have to work a lot of overtime just to make an extra $600 per month. And then, of course, next month, he'd have to do the same thing again. But what makes LifeVantage different is that when you have a client, you only have to set that client up or show that client one time. And once you've done that and you've connected them to your website and they place their first order, you don't have to show them again next month. Next month, they just simply order based on whatever their own health-related goals are. So because LifeVantage ships everything directly to them, you never have to touch the product. It's almost like you're a broker connecting people with their products. And every month, LifeVantage sends you a portion of the proceeds. Now, if at Pro 5, you're earning about $2,900 per month, Diane and I achieved this rank in 6 months. And, look, the money is great. But even better is knowing that people like Anna and Lori and the hundreds and hundreds of our clients whose lives have been changed just because we cared enough to share this with them. Now, I always know that there's some of you who are a little bit more ambitious and you're more interested in the elite ranks such as Pro 7, Pro 8, and Pro 9 and so forth. And there's other bonuses involved as well once you achieve those elite ranks. And one of them is the elite pool, which pays out 4% of the total global commissional sales to everyone who's at that Pro 7 and above. So look, there's a lot of money at those ranks, obviously, but whatever level you're comfortable with, just get back with the person who invited you, and we'll help you come up with a strategy that helps suit or meets your long-term goals. Now, to be eligible to qualify for those commissions, you simply enroll as a distributor. LifeVantage makes it very simple, but to do that, they have 3 different packages to choose from. And again, just get back with the person who invited you and let them know what you want to do. All right? So every now and then, guys, someone will ask me or Diane, they'll ask me why we chose LifeVantage, especially after declining so many other opportunities or quote unquote opportunities before. And part of it is that Diane and I believe that making a living, helping people is a wonderful way to live. But as a business person, I also understand that there's some criteria that I look at to determine if a company is viable. First is you got to have a product or a service. And we realize that the LifeVantage products, the product line, were second to none. They're award-winning, triple patented, and category creating. Unlike a lot of those other Me Too products out there that I declined over the years, with LifeVantage, we have exclusivity. That means that there's no competition. And with our triple patents, we have that exclusivity for the next, well, at least for the next 20 years. Another important factor to consider in a business is the timing. For example, if we were here discussing the original cell phone technology, remember those? Nobody would be very excited. In fact, both of these make wireless communication possible, but smartphone technology has made the old way of doing things obsolete. In the same way, activating your cells' ability to produce their own antioxidants has made the old way of supplementation obsolete. Another way of explaining timing is using Everett Rogers' innovation adoption curve. For example, when the iPhone first came out, very few people knew what a smartphone technology was. And we knew nothing about apps or any of that. However, by the time the iPhone 4 hit the market, Apple's value and profits began to skyrocket. And it just took time for people to get accustomed to the new technology. And now, of course, everyone knows, has, and utilizes smartphone technology. So how does that relate to LifeVantage? Well, in the health and wellness industry, we have our hands on a baby apple. It started off with our flagship product, Pro Tandem, and it was doing about $2 million in volume. Today, of course, we are strategically in the same position as the iPhone 4. And if that's true, then the question is, where do you want to be positioned when LifeVantage becomes a multi-billion-dollar company? And as I mentioned before, LifeVantage is a publicly traded company on NASDAQ, and in January of this year, 2020, we were honored by having been invited to do what's called the ringing of the bell. So look, as you can see, LifeVantage as a company is a big, big deal, and all that is fine and good. But what was most important to me is, and I'm sure you'd agree, is what is the caliber of people that I'm going to be working with directly. And so that would be what we call the support system, as well as the associations. What kind of training system do we have? And so LifeVantage has created a training system for those individuals who want to start their own biohacking enterprises, which is very much like a franchise. And the way franchises work is they have a proven plan. And so if you're coachable, then you can learn all the skills and all of the techniques that you need in order to build your own LifeVantage system. To me, the support system was the most important part for me. And I just want to go over a couple of people who we work with directly. First, over here to the top left, that's Patsy Caulfield. She is a high school buddy of mine. She graduated a couple years after I did. And so I know her family, Nora Salazar, Tony Salazar, we know them. And so Patsy first approached me, like I said, 5 years ago, and it took me about 3 years, and I really appreciate Patsy's patience. I really appreciate the fact that she did not give up on us. And because of that, Patsy, thank you, thank you, thank you. On behalf of my patients and my clients, they all thank you because you have changed lives just simply because you wouldn't give up. Now, when we first saw the whole workshop, kind of like you're doing tonight, it was Patsy, Dr. Melody Rodarte. Dr. Rodarte is one of the top internal medicine physicians, internal and obesity medicine in the Phoenix area. Over here to the right, I don't know if you can see, this is Carrie Williams. Carrie, my wife Diane, myself, and of course Carrie Dickey. These two ladies are Carrie Williams is from Phoenix, Arizona. She is she was a manager for Bath and Body Works and built a phenomenal business. This is Carrie Dickey. She was a bartender, fitness instructor, and she also worked with her mom on a non-for-profit organization. Carrie Dickey is a Pro 10 in the business, and Carrie Williams is a Pro 9 in the business. Melody Rodarte is a Pro 6 in the business. Down here at the bottom left, got good friends of ours. This is Randy and Brenda Geary. They're both Pro Sixes in the business. Randy's retired military and also a police officer. And Brenda was in human resources. And then right here in the middle is our good friend, Dr. Brett Brimhall. He's the gentleman I told you whose nephew was having the handwriting issues when I showed you the Axial slide. So I like the fact that there are people who are in the medical field and people who are not in the medical field. I believe Patsy told me that she was a preschool teacher as well as a Spanish teacher. So it doesn't really matter what your background is. As long as you have a passion for helping people and you are coachable, you can build this business. Again, just get back with the person who invited you. And I'm going to, let's see here, let me do the stop share. That concludes the workshop. Don't turn it off just yet, Diane. Look, guys, I hope you got something out of this, whether it was the nutritional part or the health-related part, or I hope I was able to explain the business aspect of it. Okay. Whatever your interest level is, just get back with the person who invited you and let them know what you would like to do with the information that we were able to share with you. All right. So again, just to be respectful of everyone's time, we're going to go ahead and sign off here, guys. We love you. We thank you. Again, get back with the person who invited you, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
All right, Diane, you can